Bonne Foi, Chapter 6. Tuesday I had more classes, some of which were a bit more interesting, but they passed slowly all the same. Time now seemed to revolve around Bella. The time until I would see her again, until I would touch her again. The nights I spent composing, writing melodies with tempos that matched the beat of Bella's heart or the pace of our coupling. Wednesday afternoon was a welcome sight. I went to the sociology classroom with anticipation, a little early in my eagerness. Nobody was there, save one girl reading in a corner seat. I sat in the same spot I'd been in the last time and waited for Bella's arrival. She came in 4 people later, straining under the weight of her bag. I watched her eyes flicker around the room before she found me, looking at her, and she smiled. Bella stumbled in her haste to get to the seat next to me, but didn't fall. "Hi," she said breathlessly, dropping her bag into the seat next to her. I enjoyed the sight of her flushed cheeks and bright eyes, and the sound of her racing heart. "Hello." She wore a rather light shirt today, through which I could see the outline of a lacy bra. Had she done that on purpose? "How have you been?" she asked, sliding into her chair. Her hip hit the armrest, and she winced slightly in pain. "Well enough," I said, ignoring her blunder. "And you? How did the job interviews go?" "I'm definitely not getting the job at McDonald's," she said. I might have called the manager a chauvinist pig." "Why?" I asked, both amused and concerned. He had made a pass at her. Said something vulgar? I bristled at the thought. She was mine, and I defended what was mine. He suggested that I would be better suited as a woman, to work in the back cooking than to work up front with customers. I chuckled at her sour expressions. "And what did you say to that?" She blushed. "Okay, so 'might have' was the wrong wording. I did call him a chauvinist pig." I laughed outright. "Well, he deserved it, and I'm sure you're better off not working there." I thought again of the stench of that place and mentally shuddered. Bella shrugged, smiling. "Could have been a character-building experience, but it's okay. I'm fairly certain I've got the coffee job. They're supposed to let me know by the end of the week." "Speaking of, what are your plans this weekend?" I asked. I was determined to have her all to myself, if at all possible. She shrugged again. "I think Angela wanted a movie night, and I have a paper to finish, but otherwise nothing." Considered that quickly. Her roommate would be here this weekend, which meant that if I wanted time alone with her, "Would you like to come to my place Friday night, maybe?" Her cheeks pinkered, and she smiled brightly. "I would love that." "When should I pick you up?" I asked her, hoping she would choose a time that wouldn't require me feeding her, and subsequently making excuses about why I wasn't eating. 7?" she suggested. "Perfect." I had gone over my apartment in detail, making sure it would pass inspection as a place where a human lived. I had put things I never used in the bathroom: toothbrush and toothpaste, razors and shaving cream, deodorant, Tylenol, Band-Aids. I'd stocked the kitchen too, placing typical items like milk and lunch meat and vegetables in the fridge, and bread and fruit and other things in the cabinets. I didn't think she would find anything out of the ordinary. Hopefully, it would quiet any suspicions she currently had about me too. She'd noticed my changing eyes, and I knew she must have noticed other things that she wasn't mentioning. The change in my eye color was quite convenient though, I thought. I wondered what it was that was different about animal blood that would make my eyes a deep gold rather than bloody scarlet. Whatever it was, it made me look more human than I had before, and that helped my charade. Friday during class, I had the feeling Bella was as keyed up as I was. She jumped when our arms brushed and her heart skittered into overdrive. It didn't help that it had been 5 days since we'd last had sex. After a weekend filled with it, I knew I was feeling withdrawal. Thus, it was that I arrived nearly half an hour early to the dormitory Friday night. When I knocked on the door, Angela answered. "Oh, hi, Edward," she said pleasantly. "Bella's not here. She's still at dinner." Her thoughts were so mild, so unassuming, that I couldn't help but like her a little bit, for a human at least. "Ah, well, I'm very early." "You can wait here if you'd like," she offered, stepping back to allow me in. "Thank you." I perched myself on Bella's desk chair to wait. "Well, he seems polite at least, but I hope she's being careful. He looks like he could break a few hearts." "How are you, Angela?" I asked, feeling the need to make a good impression. I didn't know how much influence this girl had over Bella, but I didn't want her warning Bella away from me. "Good, thanks. You?" "Very well," I smiled. "Did you have a good time last weekend? Bella said you were visiting your boyfriend." A vision of said boyfriend floated up in her mind, along with images I didn't really want to see of what they'd been doing all weekend. "It was great, but it's always hard coming back, you know, since I can't see him as often as I'd like." "You must care very deeply about him to enter such an arrangement," I surmised. She shrugged. "I can't imagine being with anyone else. That sort of simplifies things for me." "Yes, I know what you mean," I said, realizing the truth of it as I spoke. Could any human or vampire ever please me like Bella? Maybe. I had many lifetimes to find out. "So Bella never said what you studied?" Angela said, genuinely curious. "I haven't quite decided yet. I'm considering psychology, although I found myself more interested in anatomy these days," I said, hiding the smirk that wanted to come out at the double entendre. "That's great. I'm in biology myself. I want to go to veterinary school," she told me, excited at the prospect of a kindred spirit. "You're fond of animals?" "Oh, yes." Her mind flashed through a menagerie of childhood pets. "I mean, they're so important to our lives without us even realizing it. It feels like a duty to care for them." I smiled in spite of myself. Her enthusiasm was so like Bella's. Just as I thought that, the door opened and Bella walked in. "Speak of the devil, and the devil shall come," I thought to myself. "Edward, you're early," she said, full of surprise. I shrugged. "I was impatient, I suppose." She smiled at me, unaware that Angela watched us intently. I stood to meet Bella, hoping to convey the right body language for a proper human boyfriend. "Did you need more time?" "No, I'm ready," she said, grabbing for a backpack from her bed. I'll see you tomorrow, Ange." "Okay," Angela grinned, amused at Bella's eagerness. She'd never seen Bella so giddy before. I felt a little smug. "Have fun." Her voice was thick, with implication that I didn't need to hear the accompanying thought. "All right." I took the bag from Bella, afraid it would be as heavy as usual, but it was significantly lighter. "It was nice talking to you, Angela." "You too," she said, waving us out. "Your place is great," Bella said, craning her head around to take in the entirety of the living room. "Thanks," I murmured, watching her drift over to the piano. Her fingers fluttered over the keys. "Will you play for me now?" she asked, looking at me with hopeful eyes. "Anything in particular you'd like to hear?" I asked, striding over to the bench. She perched there beside me, eager as any child. "No, play whatever you like." Her heart thumped in excitement, and my fingers automatically settled into a matching tempo with one of the songs I'd written recently. It was a sensual piece, full of all that physical need I felt, full of my frustrations, finally drifting into satisfaction as it came to a close. I glanced over to find Bella staring at me, expression unfathomable. "What was that piece?" "I wrote it," I told her, removing my hands from the keys. "It doesn't have a title." It's beautiful, she said, fingering the keys wistfully. Or maybe beautiful is the wrong word, but I thought you must have written it. It sounded like you. Did it? I wondered aloud, glancing at her for confirmation. Well, I don't know if it sounded like you exactly, but it sounded like us. I nodded, maybe in agreement or maybe just in acknowledgement. Should I start teaching you now? She bit her lip. Only if you want to. I shrugged and moved behind her, placing my hands over hers. You start here, I said, guiding her hands to the correct position. This one, I pressed down one finger, is middle C, very important. The next is D, then E. I went on, guiding her through the scale. You see the black keys? Those are your half steps, sharps and flats. It's only a half a step between B and C and E and F. So there are none in between those keys. Okay, she murmured. Her pulse was racing. So it goes from A to G and starts over again, right? Right, I guided her through the C major scale once again. C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C, I said with each note. If you start on a different note like F, for instance, you have to adjust for the half steps. So it's F, G, A sharp, C, D, E, F. Edward, her voice wavered. Had I accidentally injured her? What is it? I think I've had enough learning for one night. I pulled back, wondering what I might have done to cause a problem. When she turned to look at me, her eyes sent a shock straight through me. Do you want to show me the bedroom now? She asked. I smiled at her would-be boldness and took her hand. That can definitely be arranged, I said, steering her toward the hall. The bathroom is there, I pointed out as we passed, and here is my bedroom. I went in ahead of her and flicked on the unnecessary, for me at least, bedside lamp. When I turned around, she was closing the door behind her, holding her lower lip between her teeth. This is really nice, she breathed, eyes traveling over the dark wood furniture and the large bed. It's nicer with you in it, I replied, already imagining her spread naked across my sheets. She blushed and stepped closer. Thank you for inviting me over, I mean. Of course, I murmured. She seemed to be seeing some deep significance in visiting my apartment that I was apparently missing. She took another step and I moved to meet her halfway. She stretched on tiptoes to place her lips to mine. I gave in immediately to her hot, urgent lips as they dragged against mine. The brush of her tongue against my mouth was the softest thing I'd ever felt, and it turned me on more than I cared to admit. I feel a little nervous, she murmured as she pulled away. Why? I asked distractedly, having found the strip of skin between her cotton shirt and her jeans. She shivered at the stroke of my fingers. Well, every other time we've, she struggled to get her words out, had sex, it's been sort of in the heat of the moment, and now... The moment isn't so hot, I chuckled, watching her cheeks flush. No, I didn't mean... I placed a finger over her lips, quieting her. There's nothing to be nervous about. She smiled tentatively. I just want to be good enough for you. I frowned, dropping the hand at her lips to her hip. What makes you think that you aren't? She shrugged and picked at my shirt, eyes locked on her fingers. I'm just so plain and boring, and you're not. What do you see when you look at me? I wondered aloud, wishing I could see for myself. I knew women and occasionally men found me attractive. That was simply a given for vampires. Judging from what Bella had told her roommate, however, she saw something else, something more. Her whole face flushed. Well, you're gorgeous, of course, and you're smart and kind and thoughtful and charming, and you could have anyone you wanted, so I just don't have any idea what you're doing with me. Kind and thoughtful, was I? She was falling for the lie, hook, line, and sinker. That thought, that should have reassured me, but instead it left me feeling strangely empty, or maybe I was just thirsty. You don't have any idea how men perceive you, do you? I said, deciding to turn the conversation away from me. She laughed humorlessly. Right, in spite of all appearances, men miraculously see a busty blonde when they look at me. I chuckled and turned her to face the full-length mirror that the previous tenant of my apartment had left behind on the closet door. Shall I show you? Her wide eyes met mine in her reflection. If you want to, she replied hesitantly. I laughed again at her uncertainty. Very well. Let's work from the top down, shall we? I let her hair fall between my fingers, lifting it so that she could see it in the mirror. It's a myth, you know, that men prefer blondes. You have such lovely dark hair, with so many colors in it, I murmured, seeing the array of browns, purples, and reds that mortal eyes would easily miss. She was already blushing as I brought my fingers to her cheek, brushing the backs of them over her skin. And perhaps dark skin is in fashion now, but yours is beautiful, like porcelain, and so soft. Her skin flooded with warmth as she blushed, and I dropped my hand away from the temptation. Instead, I went to my next step, lifting her shirt over her head to reveal her broad-clad chest. My eyes stopped there, locked in surprise. It was the lacy one I'd had a hint of on Wednesday, but now I could see all the details, the soft lavender color standing out against her skin, the delicate pattern, allowing peaks of even more tantalizing skin. Is this new? I asked, knowing I hadn't seen it in her underwear drawer. Did she have panties to match? I couldn't wait to find out. She looked away, avoiding my eyes in the mirror. Angela wanted to get something for Ben, so I went along with her. It's delectable on you, I murmured, running my hands up her slightly curved stomach to cup her breasts. She sucked in a quick breath. You said something about busty blondes earlier, I believe. Well, I've heard it said that anything more than a handful is a waste, and I'm inclined to agree. I squeezed lightly to emphasize my point. I loved the pillow-soft weight in my hands. She looked down, away from our reflection once again. Your hands could hold a bit more, she mumbled, clearly embarrassed. I stroked her hardening nipples to distract her from self-deprecating thoughts. I wouldn't want to overload myself. Besides, it's quality that matters, not quantity, and yours? I slipped my hands around to pop the clasp of her bra. Are perfect, I concluded, letting the lacy garment fall to the floor. In her reflection, I could see many things at once. The flush of pink over her cheekbones, her eyes half closed in growing arousal, the rise and fall of her chest with every heavy breath, and her rosy pink nipples hardening in the cool air. I couldn't resist reaching around to cup the perfectly round little mounds in my hand and brush my thumbs over the taut peaks. She bit her lip against a kittenish whimper, a beautiful sound, but even better was the rush of arousal I could smell from between her legs. I groaned, unable to stop the sound. What a kinky little human I'd found. So turned on by the sight of me touching her. Oh, the things I would do to her. Do you believe me yet? I asked, surprised at the strain in my voice. I'd never wanted her this badly before. Oh, do I need to keep convincing you? I think you need to keep convincing me. Her voice was breathy and her heart hammered. I didn't think she'd mind if I sped things up a bit. All right, I murmured gruffly, sliding my hands down her stomach to her waist. I love your white hips, I said against the shell of her ear, pushing my body against hers. They make me want to take hold and pound you senseless. Her eyes widened in shock, unused to hearing such things, but she liked it, I was certain. My fingers slipped down to the bottom of her jeans, popping it easily. The sound of the zipper sliding down mingled with her harsh breathing into an erotic harmony. I needed to get her in the bed soon. Bella leaned back into me, legs shaking as I pushed the jeans from her hips. They fell in a puddle around her feet, and I knelt behind her to guide her out of her shoes and to step her out of the jeans. On the way back up, I ran my hands along her quivering legs, tracing the sensitive spots behind her knees and over the inside of her thighs. The skin was so soft there, made to be caressed. Your legs feel fantastic wrapped around me, I whispered into her ear. When I was standing straight up again, my hands rested at the tops of her thighs, less than an inch away from her lace-covered sex, and the panties did match. Do you want to hear my favorite part? I asked, though I wasn't waiting for an answer. She shivered, and I slid my hand into her panties, stroking my index finger along her slick hot center. Her hips gave a delightful jerk, and I brushed her clit. I want to taste you, I groaned into her hair, not exactly sure which sense I meant the words in. You taste unlike anything else in the world. So good. God, you're wet. I can smell it. Edward, she whined, grinding against my hand. I believe you now. Good, I breathed, shoving her panties down. In the next instant, get on the bed. Her eyes widened at the harsh command, but she went. I watched her clamber onto the high mattress as I stripped away my clothing. Her movements made her breasts bounce and her ass sway enticingly at me, and the furious blush from her forehead to her chest suggested she had no idea. When my clothes were in a pile next to hers, I approached the bed. Bella sat there with her legs under the covers and her arms crossed over her chest as she watched me with large eyes. Her tongue slid out to wet her dry lips. Shy now, are we? I asked, slipping under the sheet beside her. I thought you said you believed me now. She dropped her arms uncomfortably, baring her breasts once more. It's just new for me, that's all. Well, we'll remedy that, I said while I nudged her onto her back. If I had my way, you'd never put clothes on. She laughed shakily as I moved over her. I think that would cause quite a stir on campus. I parted her thighs and slipped between them. Oh, you'd never leave my apartment. That's a little creepy, she teased. You're not going to put a collar on me and make me your sex slave, are you? The idea has merit, but no, I wasn't planning on it. I let the head of my cock brush her entrance and watched her eyes flutter. Mostly, I just want to keep you all to myself, and I pushed into her, dragging a moan from her lips. That could be arranged, she gasped, suddenly clutching my shoulders. Warm legs locked around my hips, and I quickly settled into a rhythm. I was done with the talking tonight. Thankfully, Bella agreed completely.